This is AUGforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Repay. Repay offers omni-channel integrated payment solutions for Acumatica users. Whether you are making B2B payments or collecting them, Repay is your full-service payments provider. Power up your payments to empower your business and accelerate the AP and AR payment flow through one seamless integration. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Velixo. Velixo is an award-winning provider of Excel-based reporting solutions for Acumatica. With Velixo, you can build financial, project, and other business reports in Excel with live Acumatica data in just a few minutes and get the answers you need. If you know Excel, you can do it. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. Guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Friday, April 29th, 2022, and this is episode number 83, AUG Ohio Gathering number 2, and Thoughts on Community. I hope that everyone who is planning to come to Columbus, Ohio on May 18th for our second AUG Ohio Gathering will listen to this podcast episode. This podcast episode is my way of giving an introduction to the time without taking up time during the gathering itself. For the rest of you, you still might find this interesting to learn more about our gathering format and hear some insightful commentary on community from a book that I've been reading. Before we go any further, I'd like to tell you my number one goal for our next gathering. My number one goal is that people will bring their laptops, take them out during free time, and start sharing their screen with others. More on that later. Now, this podcast episode is broken down into 3 parts. In the first part, I'm going to recap our gathering from February 24th, then talk about what to expect on May 18th at our second gathering. In the second part, I'm going to read some insightful quotes from a book that I've been reading on community. I think these quotes are very applicable to Acumatica user group gatherings. In the third part, I'm going to play 2 interviews that I did with people who attended our last gathering in February. All right, let's get started with the first part of this podcast episode. When we gathered on February 24th, we started on time with what I called group time. Our gathering consisted of 2 parts, group time and free time. We started group time by sitting in a circle and going around, giving each person 3 minutes to share something. We did this for about an hour. I started off with an introduction, which was also subject to the 3-minute limitation. I used podcast episode number 70 to give a longer introduction before the gathering. The idea was that the attendees would listen to that episode before coming to the gathering. And I'm doing the same thing with this podcast episode for our next gathering. I really like the 3-minute format. Later you'll hear Jude talk about how he also liked the 3-minute format. and I really like the way that he described it, so stay tuned for that. Later, you'll also hear Laura Jaffe talk about a 3-minute limitation in a different context, which I thought was very validating. During group time, I used the basic timer function on my watch to start a 3-minute timer after each person started talking. When the timer went off, the person sharing didn't have to stop talking immediately. The timer was simply their cue to finish their thought and wrap it up. I really like how group time went last time, so on May 18th, we're going to do the same thing and use the first hour for group time. However, I'm going to make 2 changes during group time. First, rather than sit around a table, we're going to circle the chairs without a table. This came from a suggestion in the book that I'm reading, and I'll read a quote about it later. Second, I'd like to hear what each person would be interested in discussing in more detail after group time, during free time. I'll share my computer on the big screen during group time to help us all keep track of which topics each person would like to discuss further. The goal is to help people know who to connect with during free time. At our last gathering, after the first hour was up, most people stuck around for another 1.5 to 2 hours for free time. Since this was our first gathering, we mainly talked. There were 10 of us who attended, and we probably had about 4 separate conversations going on as we continued to sit around the table during free time. The idea that I proposed in podcast episode number 70 was that everyone would bring their own food, but that was a big failure because no one brought food except for me. That didn't feel right, so I quickly ordered pizza from downstairs. In addition to this being our first gathering, it was also shortly after the holiday COVID surge, so I think we were all just happy to be at a gathering with other people. For our gathering on May 18th, I have 2 changes that I'd like to make to free time. First, we will have food. I'm going to bring in Panera bread. A big thank you to PaceJet for sponsoring the food. PaceJet makes shipping software for Acumatica. In addition to paying for the food, a couple of people from PaceJet are going to attend the gathering. Second, I'm really hoping that the laptops come out. I mentioned this at the beginning of this podcast episode because I didn't want to bury the lead. This is my number 1 goal for our gathering on May 18th. During free time. Laptops. I want to see those laptops, so please bring your laptops to the gathering. Back in 2013, I attended the world's first Power BI user group in Cleveland, Ohio. After the official user group meeting, some of us went across the street to a restaurant called Mavis Winkle's. I took out my laptop at the bar, and a few of us huddled around it. I showed something that I was working on, and another person came up with a great idea for a function called concatenate_x, which eventually made it into the Power BI product. What's the point? The point is that good things happen when the laptops come out. I would go as far as to say that laptops coming out is the goal of the gathering. That's why we do a no presentation group time format in the beginning, to help everyone know whose laptop they want to huddle around during free time. So I really hope to see those laptops come out during free time. All right, that's it for the first part of this podcast. Now for the second part. I'd like to read some quotes from a book that I've been reading. The book is called Community, the Structure of Belonging. The author is Peter Block, who wrote the book Flawless Consulting. Check out the links in the related links section on this podcast episode page for excerpts from Flawless Consulting. You'll see that Peter Block is really good at making insightful observations. So I'd like to read you some excerpts from Community, the Structure of Belonging. This book is about community in general, but I selected excerpts from chapters that I think are most relevant to Acumatica user group gatherings. Community, the Structure of Belonging by Peter Block. There is growing interest in building community. At best, we convene a social event, a block party, or a reception with food and music. All good things to do, but people most often huddle with like-minded people, and strangers remain strangers. Professional conferences continue to be designed around inspiring keynote speeches and content-filled workshops to attract attendees. Presenting data in this way becomes a weak substitute for learning and education. Belonging is best created when we join with other people in producing something that makes a place better. It is the opposite of thinking that I must do it on my own, that wherever I am, it is all on my shoulders, and that perhaps I would be better off somewhere else. The structures in this book, both the thinking and the practices, can be chosen and implemented regardless of personal style or lack thereof. We can create structures of belonging even if we are introverted and do not like to make eye contact. Chapter 1. Insights into Transformation. Social fabric is created one room at a time. It is formed from small steps that ask, who do we want in the room? And what is the new conversation that we want to occur? Most sustainable improvements in community occur when citizens discover their own power to act. It is when citizens stop waiting for professionals or elected leadership to do something and decide they can reclaim what they have delegated to others that things really happen. Peer-to-peer interaction is where most learning takes place. It is the fertile earth out of which something new is produced. How we structure the gathering is as worthy of attention as grasping the nature of a problem or focusing on the solutions we seek. Chapter 9. The small group is the unit of transformation. We change the world one room at a time. The way we structure the assembly of peers and leaders is as critical as the issue or concerns we come together to address. The small group is the structure that allows every voice to be heard. It is in groups of 3 to 12 that intimacy is created. This intimate conversation makes the process personal. In the small group discussion, we discover that our own concerns are more universal than we imagined. Something almost mystical, certainly mysterious, occurs when citizens sit in a small group, for they often become more authentic and personal with each other there than in other settings. Designing small group conversations is so simple that it rarely receives the attention and importance it deserves. Every large group meeting needs to use small groups to create connection and move the action forward. As obvious as this might seem, it amazes me how many events and gatherings do not do it. How many conferences, summits, and events have we attended where the small group discussion is relegated to the breaks and thereby left to chance? In gatherings where there are more than 20 people in the room, which I am calling the large group, we need to move back and forth from the small group to the large group. Chapter 10. Questions are more transforming than answers. The right small group conversation releases aliveness and intention into the community. It is only within this context and communal aliveness that our skill at problem solving will make the difference. Questions are the essential tools of engagement. Most leaders are well schooled in providing answers and remain rather indifferent and naive as far as the use of questions goes. How many PowerPoint presentations have you seen flooded with answers, blueprints, analyses, and proposals? How many have you seen presenting questions? Questions that trigger opinions, argument, analysis, explanation, and defense have little power. It is significant that most of the meetings we go to and the conversations we engage in have these qualities. Our answers to the questions do not matter. The questions have an impact, even if the response is to refuse to answer them. Chapter 14, Designing Physical Space that Supports Community. Physical space is more decisive in creating community than we realize. Most meeting spaces are designed for control, negotiation, and persuasion. Community is built when we sit in circles, when there are windows and the walls have signs of life, when every voice can be equally heard and amplified, when we all are on one level. Meeting rooms are traditionally designed for efficiency, control, and business as we know it. The circle is the geometric symbol for community, and therefore for arranging the room. No tables, if possible. The ideal seating for a small group is a circle of chairs with no table. Put the chairs as close together as possible, which forces people to lean in to one another. All right, that's it for the excerpts from the book. Pretty interesting, huh? Now for the third and last part of this podcast episode. I'm going to play 2 interviews that I did with people who attended our AUG Ohio gathering on February 24th. Here we go. All right, I've got Jude Dilly here. Jude, you attended our gathering 2 months ago, and maybe you could start off telling us who you work for and when you started there, because I think it was not that long ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Tim. So I work for Alpha Insulation and Waterproofing. It's headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. And we've got what we call branches, 17 branches located in the East, Midwest, and South and Southwest United States. And I have been there since January 17th. So I am 3 days over 3 months. At Alpha.
And if I remember correctly, did you attend the Acumatica Summit as well?
I did. So that was kind of, working out start date. They asked me to start so that I could in time to attend the summit. And the nice thing was about that was that I was able to then go to some of the trainings that Acumatica offered at the summit. So I did those. I think it was 2.5 days of training as well.
So that was perfect timing. And your title on LinkedIn is Financial Systems Manager. So are you kind of the point person for Acumatica there?
I'm supposed to be. I'm new. So I think that's kind of the idea. The controller there, Cassie Moore, whom I believe fairly well, is teaching me the things that she's learned about Acumatica since she was there for the implementation, and knowledge kind of growing every day, and it's just a process, as you know, of learning all the different ins and outs and modules and all that kind of stuff. So
especially with your perspective being newer to Acumatica, I wanted to get your thoughts on the gathering we did about 2 months ago. I've got the date here, February 24th, 2022. So you were there. You were one of the 10 people who joined that gathering. And maybe give us some thoughts on what you thought about the format and how we could improve things when we gather next month.
So first and foremost is always offer food. I know that was kind of a little joke we had there, but but no, it was great. I really liked it. I um, thought it was nice to meet other people, especially since I think there was like a partner or two there, or at least a couple of people who maybe worked for a partner prior. And, it's good to hear other people have the same struggles and issues that you have. And granted, I'm very, very new, but still some of the same pain points, some of the same learning issues and curves. And I thought it was a great opportunity to network, connect with people, and because it gives you another place to kind of reach out to, another person to reach out to when you're stuck, to say, hey, have you experienced this? Are you dealing with this? How did you get through this kind of a thing? So and I like to mingle anyway. I'm a people person, so it was good for me all around.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the food point going into it.
Yeah.
That was the point I was most nervous about. And the reason I tried it without food is because I wanted to do as low budget as possible. And my
Yeah.
mindset on this was, how can we try starting a group with the idea that we can make it as easy as possible for anyone, anywhere in the world to kind of imitate the format? And I think it was
Yeah.
very clear that the no food idea was a bad idea. So I did actually get we got PaceJet, who is an Acumatica ISV in Columbus. They're going to sponsor food for next time. And I think I'm
Cool.
just going to do something simple like Panera bread sandwiches. How does that sound to you?
That sounds fantastic. I love Panera bread.
Excellent. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just something. Yeah. It was clear we need that.
Yeah.
And so, I get your like, all my word for this will be your commiserating point.
Yeah.
You get to just commiserate with other users. You're going through similar things, similar struggles. And, I think that was good for the first meeting. As time goes on, I think we need to dig a little deeper and actually come away with more specific things. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm still I'm a little more optimistic about this part than no food, but I
Mm.
another big challenge is getting someone to present something, because that takes so much
Yeah.
time, right? So I'm
Yeah.
really striving for a no presentation format where we use the first hour to just go around and kind of share what we've been working on, like we did. Now, the second 2 hours, we didn't really dig into stuff. And my goal that for next month with the second 2 hours is for the laptops to come out. Because to me, if
Yeah.
we can get the laptops to come out, then we're getting into specific things. Now, how we actually break up, I don't know. But to me, that's my main goals. Get the laptops out, get people huddled around screens. But what are your thoughts on presentation format versus what we did in that first hour and the idea of how to use the second 2 hours?
Yeah. So I think you're exactly right. It's way better to commiserate with everyone at first, kind of um, feel out what everyone's dealing with, because I think after we did that, we were then able to kind of hone in on topics that everyone was interested in, or at least a group of people, right? What might be interested in. Um, so I know there was another gentleman that was very interested in writing a certain query in Acumatica. And I was kind of interested in the same thing he was doing, because he was getting the same problem of duplicating data as I was getting. And I think another big area of interest was Velixo, especially since Velixo has been updated so much lately. They've been hard at work over there, which I'm very happy about. But, so I like the idea of, kind of going around the room, getting a feel for where everyone is at, what issues they're dealing with, or, what they've been working on. And then, getting people who are interested in that into groups to kind of share knowledge and, work through things. I just feel like that's a lot more productive for me anyway, for me.
In that first hour where I used my stopwatch to,
Yeah.
I think I gave everyone 3 minutes to
Yeah.
help us stay on track. What'd you think on that? Was that too cruel, or is that okay?
I think it was probably cruel to some people and nice to others.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
good
it
balance.
was kind of, it was just a way to help us keep moving around the room and not turn into a presentation, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm thinking of doing that again. I felt like that first hour went well. I feel like where there's most room for improvement is the next 2 hours, hour 2 and 3. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts then on? I totally agree with you. We kind of started honing in on some topics. We didn't
Yep.
get to laptops, but we did at least discover what people were interested in. Um, do you have any thoughts on how practically to identify those topics, and how many topics do you think we could realistically handle? I'm hoping we get 15 people next time. We had 10 last time. Is that, what are your thoughts on, like, how many groups, how many topics can we really do? How many people per group? And how do we practically identify what topics we want to talk about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think 2 or 3 topics is probably kind of it. I mean, I don't know. It depends on what people are interested in what, but I know that there was a lot of engagement around, or at least interest around, Excel, like Velixo, and um, query writing, so inquiries in Acumatica. And I think some other people had some interests in other parts of Acumatica, and you have to forgive me on that because it wasn't an area of interest for me. I don't particularly remember what it was. But for getting ideas and about how to break into groups and things, I think probably just like we did, is talk about what are you working on, what's causing you issues, what would you like to do, and then you get those thoughts out in the open, and then other people can say, yeah, I'm interested in that, and let's agree to work on this particular situation. Is I'm certainly okay with that. uh, Whether I'm solving a problem or I'm learning something new, that both of those things benefit me, right, in the work that I do. So um, that's just my perspective. Not sure how the other people would feel about it, but I'm certainly okay with that.
Well, that's good. Yeah, we're getting your perspective. Yeah, don't worry about everyone else at this point. I was thinking actually the same thing, 2 or 3 topics. Part of it is just logistically the room. We have it. I think we're pretty fortunate to have such a big room there where we could
Yep.
probably easily handle 3 different, maybe 4 different groups. Part of it depends on how big the group gets.
Yep.
How
For sure.
many things you can split into. But I was thinking similarly, and I was thinking that we just whiteboard it. Just start
Yep.
writing down the ideas and then take a hand vote, to make it low tech to
Yep.
determine what we're going to break out into that night. What do you think?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, I started to say, we write the things down, but then I was I wasn't sure how tech or how formal you wanted to get. So that's kind of why I didn't say anything like that. But yeah, that sounds perfect to me.
I just feel like, so many of us, at least I am, still working remotely. And even if you're not, even if you're in an office, more and more of the people we interface with are remote. Like even you mentioned so many different branches that you deal with. Probably a lot of
Yep.
the people you work with are somewhere else. And so much of our modern working environment is remote these days. It's kind of nice to take advantage of an in-person format and just lean on the low tech, let's get out paper, let's do stuff we
Yeah.
can't do when we're virtual. Maybe we just
Yes.
take a hand vote. Maybe we shout out, I don't know, something
Do
you
a
can only do in
yay
person.
and nay, or an off and a nay. Yeah.
We keep the tally marks on a chalkboard.
Yes.
You'll have to bring
That's
in a
right.
chalkboard.
Exactly.
I think we'll try that. Yeah, I like the idea of 2 or 3. I had another thing I want to throw. Do you have another few minutes? Go over a
Yeah,
little bit
I
here.
do. Yeah.
Another idea I want to throw out to you. I'm like toying with the idea. We're not quite there yet, but kind of setting the expectation of limiting the group size. So, I mean, we only had 10 people last time, but I'm toying with the idea of limiting the group size to 20 people. And I have some reasons why from a
Yeah.
book that I've been reading. But I want to get your thoughts on the more the merrier, with which if you do that, I think you wind up even unintentionally into a presentation format versus a smaller, hard limit. We don't go over a certain number of people to foster the breakout nature of it. What are your thoughts on those two approaches?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not the more the merrier in this situation, because you'll never get that many people to engage into 2 or 3 topics. At least if we're talking about my opinion, what you said we are. So in my
Yes, we
opinion,
are.
you'll never get that many people to engage in 2 or 3 topics. And I think, as you grow the group and you get 20 and then you break into another group, there's no reason why the same folks still can't communicate back and forth, or even switch groups once in a while or whatever, things like that. You can still make it creative, but still have a forum where people can engage in real conversations, because if it gets into the place where we're just having presentations, I'm not sure how helpful people will think that is, going forward. If that makes sense to you.
I'm thinking similarly, and it's not that presentations are not helpful. It's
Yeah.
that, at least in my opinion, I'd rather just watch a presentation on my own time on a YouTube video or something like that.
Yeah.
If I'm taking making the effort to be in person, I don't want to just sit passively watch a presentation, because that's something I could do somewhere else, right?
Yes.
I
Agree.
mean, I guess you could use a movie theater analogy and say there's a reason people still go to theaters, but I'm not going to break out popcorn or anything in our
Yeah.
user group format. But I think, yeah, you got to take advantage of that in person. And I think keeping it small is helpful. And I like the point that you mentioned. You could have a second group, let's say Columbus, Ohio, we're not in a huge market. Let's say we're in Los Angeles and you start a group, you wind up with 20 people, you got 10 more people knocking on the door. Well, that's just a second group, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
have to, you can meet down the street, or in another room in the same building. But you treat yourself as a second group, and then you just add another group when you reach that 20 mark. Is that kind of what you were thinking there?
Yeah. And by helpful, I meant the same thing that you said. I guess I just didn't articulate it well enough. And just exactly, you can watch a presentation from anywhere. So, when you go to something like this, you're looking to be engaged. You're looking to, share information with other people and learn something. Whereas if you're just watching a presentation, there's no reason why you need to show up at a particular place, So, but yeah.
And we've got the Acumatica Summit, for that once a year big event, or there's tons of people, tons of sessions. We're not filling that need. That is filled by Summit. So yeah, this is just another angle on things and keeping it small. I like your word engage that you keep using, because it's almost like you're not just looking to learn. I think you also said you're looking to learn something and solve a problem, where if you solve someone else's problem, that's maybe not even a problem that you have, but what's the benefit, that you get out of that?
Yeah. By solving someone else's problem, you also learn something new, and you have the satisfaction of helping somebody else, within the
It may
community.
build some confidence, like
Right.
makes you more confident in solving another problem, even one at your own company.
Yep. Exactly. So, I love problem solving. I don't, that's probably not everybody, but I love problem solving, whether I'm solving my own problems or somebody else's, or, something like that. That's just my wheelhouse. That's something I enjoy. So I get equal, it's equal value for me, whether I'm solving mine or someone else's problem. So
I really like that point.
yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for taking the time, do a little interview. I'll wrap this up into a podcast, and looking forward to seeing you next month in May.
All right, Tim. Sounds good.
All right, I've got Laura Jaffe here, and I thought it'd be interesting, Laura, to get your perspective on attending the user group in February, especially since you attended remotely. And maybe we can give the backstory on why you had to attend remotely before we start.
Sure, Tim. Well, we're here in Ohio, and the weather being what it is, I was really excited actually about coming down to Columbus. Got up in the morning, and the forecast was for freezing rain, right about the time that I would have been probably headed back from Columbus back up to Cleveland where I live. So, I don't even remember how the weather worked out. I think it might have been just rain, but I didn't want to get caught in the freezing rain. So that was awesome that you were able to put me up on that big screen there. I saw the picture of the group. Everyone else was sitting around the table, and you had me at the front of the room. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, I was watching the weather too, and it was supposed to hit like around 6 o'clock. I mean, like right when we're gonna in the middle of the user group, and I'm like, I guess it's my fault for picking February for a time to start this off. But we did have to scramble a little bit. I had to figure out how to connect up to the monitor, and then eventually we dragged that big speaker there, which is why in that picture you're kind of blocked by this little vertical speaker. But at least we got you on, and I haven't talked to you since. What was it like? Like, first of all, just let's talk basics. Were you able to even hear us okay, or did you have to kind of strain?
I could hear pretty well. I had a view of only one side of the table, so I could see half the people and hear pretty well. I have to say it was not really optimal. When everyone is on Zoom together, it's a different experience. Everyone's kind of on the same footing. Being the only one remote, which was just the way it was with the weather, it's a little more disconnected. I didn't feel like I quite got the same level of interaction when you're not there, but I did get some valuable information. I actually had reason to interact with one of the other participants a couple weeks later, and so we connected on LinkedIn and worked on something. So it's great to make those connections, which is really why I wanted to be a part of this. And I hope next time I think being in person is a better option if one can do that. So
yeah, I was thinking about this is only going to be our second one, so we're not really even in the sphere of policies and procedures. But just kind of general, I don't think I would volunteer to hook someone in remotely, like as a general thing, like, oh, you could either attend in person or remotely. I think it's in person. That's the whole reason for it. But of course, in your case with the weather and everything, it was sort of like a special circumstance. But I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Like, especially being that was my take. I almost forgot you were there half the time. What was your take on being remote? Do you feel like that's something that maybe should be an option, or is it like, let's just stick to in person, and then special cases, you could jump in remotely?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think it should either be everyone in person, or if for some reason you were to have a meeting that would be in a different format, everyone be remote. But the hybrid format is really not optimal. It's not optimal for you guys, or for the remote person, the in person or the remote. But I really appreciate you doing it, and I definitely valued attending, but I think my preference would be to be there in person. So I agree with not having that option.
Yeah, and I forget if we talked this when you were on the screen or not. I think you were on the screen just for the first hour. Do you remember? Was that correct?
Yeah. So I think when you guys broke and got some food or broke up into the little groups, you turned me off, which is what we had decided. No, you told me that at time. So that was
I can't remember if it was the
fine.
first
I
hour.
got to go have my dinner, so it was all good.
Yeah. How can we make that sound as brutally as possible? You I don't know, you pulled
the plug.
Pulled the plug.
You pulled the plug. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't remember if it was when you were still on or after we pulled the plug, but we did talk about what's the difference being in person, and this is not like there's no formula for this, right? There's something as human beings that make us a little more hesitant to share things when you've got this like creepy camera that's turned on, right? I mean, who knows what's that? Someone recording it on the other end is, you know what I mean? It's running through the internet. And when it runs through the internet, there's just some thing that makes you a little less likely to share something, right? And we were talking about the advantages of being in person. And even though you don't sign non-disclosure agreements, it's like people are more apt to just pull up their actual environment and show you what's going on. Yeah, you might see some customer names or something like that, but look, it's a small group of people. You kind of have an idea of who's in the room. If you know there's someone who's even in your industry, you might just sort of not let them see that, right? You just have more comfort and more control when you're in person that you don't get when you're doing it virtually.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And yeah, and especially with it being the hybrid format, and I'm remembering now that the video kind of froze for a while. So
I didn't remember that.
I think maybe you weren't aware of it, but I think it was I don't know if you want me to say anybody's names, but I think it was Mike.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Mike from AccuNet, and
okay.
He was kind of frozen in my camera.
Did we remember to turn the laptops? His
mouth ajar saying something, and the sound went on, but no one moved after that. So
did we remember to turn the laptop so you could at least see who was talking, or did you have one view the whole time?
I can only see one side of the table.
Okay,
so
the whole time.
I was looking at Mike and whoever else was on that side of the table. And then I think on the other side, there were some folks as well. But, without seeing who's talking, it's really, it's hard being the only remote
different
one, and everyone's having a conversation, but you're kind of not sure who's speaking because the camera's not there. So yeah, not optimal, but but it was great that you set that up. I don't want you to feel badly about it.
So yeah, maybe we won't make it a regular thing going forward, just special circumstances. But I haven't asked you this. Figure I'll just ask you since I have you. Do you feel like you have enough Acumatica people that up in Cleveland to do a little user group up there? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to do that. We've actually been having some groups, not in person, but just sessions on Zoom with our Acumatica customers. Haven't expanded that beyond our own customer base, but there's definitely some other people I know up here, the AccuNet folks. Some of them, some are in Columbus, but I know some resources here, and there's other resellers. So yeah, I would love to get that going. I don't know if I have the wherewithal to organize that. I really impressed with you taking that on. Gotta figure out that whole food thing, right? And the whole organization of it. It's easier to do things remote. It's kind of almost with with the pandemic and everything, we had that option, and then you get used to it and you go, well, that's pretty easy, right? We don't have to work out all the logistics. But yeah, I would love to have something up here in Cleveland. Maybe we'll have something and have you come up if you have the opportunity to do that and there isn't an ice storm.
Yeah, we'll do it not in winter.
Not in the winter. Yeah.
Me being from San Diego, I don't really think about those things. So just do it in February. No big deal.
Right. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. I'll have to think about that one.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the hesitancy. So let's talk about that a little bit. My whole philosophy on this is I'm trying to do something. We're only talking about one gathering so far, one more next month, right? I mean, this is just starting off. It's not this big thing, but my thinking the whole time is, how can we do it in a way that someone else could do it somewhere? So, what are some of the hesitancies there? Like, that's even why the idea of the format was a no presentation format. So you don't have to line that up. Then food was a fail. We need food. But we got PaceJet, who's located in Columbus. They're going to sponsor the food for the next one. Maybe we get them to sponsor Cleveland as well. So let's say we could take care of that. I have an idea on a place to meet. Actually, I have a couple ideas. We could talk about that offline. So let's say I could take care of food, sponsorship. I could take care of place. And you don't need any, if you go with the format that we did in Columbus, you don't need any presentation to line up. What other hesitancies and logistic stuff that makes you be like, oh, this is a lot of work?
I guess really it's just kind of the concern, no one will show up, right? So
I hadn't thought about that. That's a real concern.
But
there's fear of missing out and there's fear of failure, right? And so you got to leverage the fear of missing out in people to balance out your own fear of failure in a sense. I like that. Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot of downside. It's pretty low risk, really, if you think about it, right? If you don't have
we did it 3 hours. The reason I did it 5 to 8 was because that's when I could book the room that I have access to. But I was thinking there's also other advantages to that, in that you're typically not stepping on scheduled meetings in the 5 to 8 range, right? And then it's only 3 hour commitment, and we're aiming for one a quarter. It's not like we're going monthly or weekly or anything like that. Yeah. What other fears or concerns or do you have?
Hey, you just want to make sure, you've got the right ground rules, right? So that no one is, overstepping or, oversharing or, I don't have a lot of experience with that organizationally. So just would want to make sure we have some kind of ground rules, whatever, so that things are successful and everyone gets something out of it. But, if you have a sort of a template, like you're working on building out this template, I'm thinking of it as a template because I'm kind of a computer person and everything's a template, right? So a template for the meeting format, maybe we can leverage that and do something similar. I would love to.
So I hear two things there. One is ground rules. So I just put together a simple 5-point, they're one sentence each. One was limit 3 people per organization for each gathering. 2, if you are a VAR, no poaching clients from other VARs. 3, don't be a jerk. 4, come with something to share. 5, be willing to learn something new. That was the ground rules. Then we have a little agenda on the augforums.com/AUG Ohio, just as a suggestion. This is not a have to do it. You can do whatever you want, right? But that kind of speaks to your point about you just want to get started, right? It's like having the first event. I don't even call it an event. I call it a gathering. Having the first gathering is the hardest part, right? Getting off the ground. So you got some kind of ground rules. You need some kind of agenda. You need a place to meet. You need some food. I learned that the hard way.
People like to eat. Everyone wants to eat, especially if you have it from 5 to 8. I mean.
Yeah. Well, and I had a feeling that was going to happen, but I was still willing to try it. I was willing to fail with the food idea just to see. And I tried getting people to bring some food. There's even a Whole Foods right by, but no one budged. No one brought food.
I saw that when I was planning to come down. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And I thought I would just maybe play it by ear, which I guess is what everyone else did. Right. So no one had food. But I like your list of ground rules, the 5 rules. Those are great.
And then on your point about, not anyone overdoing it. And this might have to do less with, you use the word experience, might have to do less with experience and more with personality. Like I had no problem using what kind of watch do I have? My Timex Ironman watch, simple, basic watch. And I had a timer on it that I set to 3 minutes. And we started right off the bat with, I pressed the timer. So I only gave myself 3 minutes for an introduction. And then, so I was kind of setting that as the expectation. And then everyone knew, okay, the next person has 3 minutes. And when the timer went off, like, I don't know if you could hear the timer go off on the video, but when the timer went off, you didn't have to stop, no more talking, just finish your thought, wrap it up. And I think that worked well. It helped people who would maybe just keep going. It just gave them a little stopping point. And then even people who maybe wouldn't share as much, they almost had a goal, let me see if I can get to that timer marker. And I think it worked well, but I think you have to have someone who's willing to put their timer on, because that could be, too rude for some people. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, because you really want to have a group dynamic. You don't want to have 1 or 2 people they may have valuable information, but you want everyone to be involved in the conversation. So I think a timer is a good idea. I'm in another group, personal life, where we do use a timer for a similar purpose. So yeah, that's definitely a good one.
Can I ask you on that other group experience, how many people and how many minutes each?
Well, it's an investment club, and we have about, varies how many are there, but usually about a dozen, about 12. And we're trying to figure out the right amount of time. We go around and we're doing these everyone's got a stock that they're reporting on. And some problem we had was sometimes people would go on too long. So 3 minutes was a number that we use. Sometimes
Really?
3 seems too short.
Interesting.
I think we recently adjusted it to 3.5 minutes. Personally, I think.
And what do you use for a timer?
Just a phone, the timer on the smartphone.
Okay.
Yeah, and it helps. You get to the end, the timer goes off, and it's a cue for sure. All right.
Is it the same thing? You don't have to freeze and stop. You just kind of wrap up your thought.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You don't have to freeze. So that's it helps.
Very interesting to me. Even you say like a dozen people, because I've been thinking about, I'm not going for the big event here. And I think most quote user groups, when it comes to software, go for the big event. I'm intentionally trying to keep it small. And I'm thinking of just saying that we only have a limit of 20 people. And I get that number 20 from a book I'm reading on community. And kind of 20 is this author's take on when you cross the line from small group to large group. What are your thoughts on that in terms of just number of people and when you just grow too much to be able to have that type of group format?
That's interesting that you said 20, because actually this investment group that I'm a part of has in our bylaws also a limit of 20.
Oh, I love this. This is great.
Yeah, it's written in the bylaws, no more than 20, partly because we meet in people's homes. So, you get too many people, then it's a problem. But same, you have too many people, you really don't have the same dynamic. So I think as far as the user group, I'd hate to have you have to hate to turn anyone away, but I do think there's a big difference between having, a smaller group, 15, 20 people versus 50 or 100 or something like that. At that point, you're really just going to have a lot of people who are more observers. I mean, you just don't have time for everyone to share if you have 100 people in the room.
Well, it
So,
sounds like with your investment group at a dozen people, you haven't hit the 20 yet. But when you do, let's say you've got 10 people knocking on the door. My thought on the Acumatica side is, I don't know if we get to 30 people in Columbus, Ohio, but let's say we do. You got 10 people looking to get in. My thought is just meet somewhere else. That's just another group. What do you think?
you could subdivide, or you could, I was thinking the same thing, or you could split by interests. You could have a group that was more focused on development, a group that was more focused on reporting or manufacture. You could do it by discipline or by verticals. I mean, you don't want to get too narrow, but if you had too many people, maybe you almost you'd have a couple groups and with different focuses. That's a lot of work for you, Tim, to organize all that. So I don't know how many user groups you want to run, but
well, I don't really think of it like I'm running it. Someone else would have to
take ownership of some of those, but
I feel like if I just put a 20-person cap, if we ever reach that, then it just becomes kind of spontaneous, right? If someone else wants to show up at some place at some time for another group, they can figure out how to market that, right? I mean, what they want to focus on, et cetera. I don't feel like I am not looking to control anything here. This is just an experiment, and doing it in a way that it's just giving people ideas for how they could do it on their own. That's why I'm interested in your willingness to try something in Cleveland.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Right. And I guess it's not necessarily a fixed 20, right? So maybe you'd have, not the same 20 people all the time. It's kind of whoever wants to come. Maybe you have 30 people interested, and one month, you get 20, and then 3 months later you get a different combination. Whoever's first to let you know, or let the organizer know, would be able to do that. But yeah, I do think that having a limit is not a bad thing. I don't know if it has to be 20. Maybe it seems like a good number. If you want to be able to go around and have everyone have a time to talk, if you figure if everyone talks for 3 minutes and you have 20 people, that's an hour, right? So
yeah.
If you have 30 people, now you've got everyone gets 2 minutes if you want to stay to an hour, which I guess you could do that, but you're starting to get a little too many. I agree.
Yeah, maybe we just try it. I mean, I'm all for trying it before making bylaws. I mean, that's my philosophy. You just try it and see what happens. That's why I was willing to try no food. Don't think it through too much. My main goal for next month is get the laptops to come out after the first hour. That didn't happen last time, and I would love to see as many laptops out as possible. That's my goal. I've got like one goal, for each session.
What did happen after I got unplugged? I'm kind of curious.
Well, we sat around and talked. We all stayed. No one moved. Everyone stayed around the table, but you wound up with like 3 or 4 smaller conversations. I kind of got up and moved just to move around the table. And then I placed the pizza order, got some pizza, and once I realized my failed food idea, there was a pizza place right downstairs. I grabbed some pizza, and we just kind of sat around and talked. I was surprised by how fast the time went by. And I feel like part of it had to do with it being so close to the COVID spike. I think at least this is my take, I was just happy to be in a room full of people. And so I didn't really care what we did. But that was it. Yeah. For me, next time if the laptops come out, I feel like that's the catalyst to really having some smaller group things that you're actually looking at instead of just talking about.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Well, I went over. I should have put a 15-minute timer on myself for this.
It's okay.
Thanks for the chat. I'm going to include this on a podcast episode. We can talk offline about a Cleveland idea. I know you're tentative for next month. You still tentative, or what's the likelihood we see you?
I'll try to make it. I think I will. I don't.
It is a long drive, so I won't feel bad if you don't come down. That's like 4 hours back and forth.
Yeah. Well,
Either way, we'd love to see you.
Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out to me on this chat, and I hope I'll see you in May.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of AUGforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.